I went to the Ogaden to do a story about human rights because my information in Nairobi was there was a government campaign that was hurting a lot of people in the Ogaden region, and that there was a rebellion. There was an armed group that was fighting against the state, and the state was fighting back. But there was many innocent people that were getting brutalized in this battle. And so I went to the Ogaden, and my wife and I, and a photographer, basically embedded with the ONLF, which is a rebel group that was fighting at the time, the Ogaden National.
Did you intentionally take your wife, or she had to?
No, she was shooting video. My wife is a lawyer, but at the time she was working for the New York Times as a videographer.
I see.
So we wanted to cover this. We wanted the written story, we wanted a video, we wanted pictures. We put a lot of resources into this because Ethiopia is one of the most important countries in Africa.
Yes.
It's one of the biggest. It's got the longest history. It's in a very strategic place.
But that part of Ethiopia is particularly dangerous. That's why I was reading.
It is. It was in a conflict,
Yes.
but it was important because the integrity of Ethiopia is an important story.
That's
and
right.
these guys were challenging, the ONLF was challenging the integrity of Ethiopia to some degree. And so we spent time with them to get their story about what are you fighting for? How do you run your rebellion? What is the appropriate action? Who are you targeting? What are you trying to achieve? And then another piece of it was the people in the Ogaden, and what do they think? Do they support the rebellion? How are they suffering? What are their needs? And granted, we had a specific perspective because we were with the ONLF, but that was the only way to get in. The government was not going to give us an escorted tour through the Ogaden. The only way in was to work with the rebels and see it from their perspective. But in the process, we talked to many civilians, people in villages, from Jijiga down to Degabor, and we kept hearing the same thing. We kept hearing that the government military was abusing people, was brutalizing innocents, raping girls, burning down houses, hanging elders. And this was part of the government's response to the insurgency that was happening. And I was really upset by what I heard and felt this responsibility to share it. Because Ethiopia is a close American ally. It receives a lot of aid from the United States. It receives military aid and training.
In fact, you mentioned that the government is supported by the CIA. How true is that?
It's hard for anybody to know what the CIA is doing because it's secret. But my information was the CIA was working with the Ethiopian intelligence services.
In the Ogaden or throughout the region?
Throughout the region.
I see.
Throughout the region. But that included the Ogaden.
Yes.
And the primary American interest was not Ethiopia's domestic issues. It was containing what they saw as Islamic extremism. They did not want, both the American government and the Ethiopians had a common interest, which was to protect the region from the spread of Islamic groups. Mm-hmm. And they were worried that in Somalia that was growing.
Mm-hmm. How organized are the ONLF people?
So they were like medium organized, was my observations. They seemed to have old weapons. They had kind of torn up camouflage uniforms. They didn't have a lot of food. Many of the guys were very thin. They were serious, and they were willing to endure a lot of sacrifice for their cause.
Are they supported by any foreign powers? Or?
We were. I had been told they were supported by Eritrea, by people outside the region. I never saw evidence of that, but later, in meeting some members of the ONLF, information I got was they had been trained in Eritrea, and Eritrea, because of the issues and tensions between Eritrea and Ethiopia, Eritrea was helping several rebel groups inside Ethiopia. That's what I was told. I didn't see that for a fact, so I want to be, cautious about what I say. But I heard that from many different sources.
Mm-hmm. You talked to the leaders, the commanders, as well as the rebels. Mm-hmm. How passionate were they about their cause? And in fact, what's their ultimate cause, do you think?
It was a little confusing because some of them were fighting for autonomy. Some of them wanted either full autonomy or independence. They said, you know what, this is a Somali part of the region.